There is no longer Parker Schnabel operating a backhoe. He was the star of the gold rush and the youngest person to ever pull millions of dollars from frozen ground. He's behind closed doors. After getting a harsh sentence in one of the worst environmental mining cases in history, Schnabel's gold empire came to an end. He was sentenced to life in jail without the chance of parole, and there were no more appeals. Parker is the same person who started a mining company with the money he saved for college, who found gold worth more than $13 million 0 cents by age 24 and made mud into TV gold, making $24 million 0 cents in season 14 alone. But his $16 million 0 cents from this year is now stuck. His claims about Dominion Creek are being looked into, and fans still have one hot question. How did the miner who was the most orderly and hardworking in TV history end up in jail? Parker Schnabel is used to being under a lot of stress. He's played the gold game since he was a kid. He had already dug up over $13 million 0 cents worth of gold by the time he was 24. His team made $24 million 0 cents just in season 14. With the price of gold going up even more in season 15, he should be very happy right now. On the other hand, he's about to face a financial disaster, a breakdown, and now something much worse. Parker makes a choice that changes everything between getting more ounces and leaving a lasting memory. The story then goes in a different direction, straight to court. Parker only thought about one number before this season, 10,000 ounces. That was the goal. That's more than $26 million 0 cents in gold right now. It's very big. He worked hard, but that wasn't enough to get him there. He needed a lot of work, good pay, and no delays. That's when he did something that made people look twice and then sound the bells. He paid $2,500,000 0 cents for Gold Run and Sulphur Creek. Two huge claims, not just any splotches of dirt. These were important ones. Some of the best places to find gold in the whole Klondike, with $1,500,000,000 0 cents worth of gold found there in the last 100 years. But they were also dangerous because the ground was bare and unsteady and the risks were unknown. Parker didn't think twice. He wanted a chance to be great. He was ready to give up everything. Parker had to move his largest wash plant, Bob, from Ken and Stewart's claim to Sulphur Creek in order for the new claims to work. The 25-mile trip was the longest one he had ever tried. His team only had 10 hours to do it. Not only is that tight, it's crazy. But they just barely got it done. Broken parts were quickly fixed by mechanics, and Tyson Lee pushed the logistics. Finally, Bob was up and going. Things looked good for a short time. Wonderful. Bob got 290.05 ounces of gold worth $766 0 cents in just 4 days. Parker's team went over 6.0 pounds when Roxanne added another 276.01 pounds at elbow cut. There are $16 million 0 cents in the books. Right then, the rest looked like a good idea. However, time was running out behind the scenes. There were more problems at Dominion Creek and Bridge Cut as they dug deeper. Parker's main gold wash plant, Big Red, broke down after 12 seasons and more than $53 million 0 cents in gold. When the tension bars broke, the whole process stopped. Over the years, that plant had made 34,300 ounces of money. It was gone. Now, Parker had no room for mistakes when only Bob and Roxanne were running. Something had to go right for him, but it didn't. There was already legal trouble going on that you didn't see on TV. In a hurry to get more claims and get all the money he could before winter, Parker made quick deals. He bought nearby claims through a private deal that skipped steps for environmental review. As soon as his team started working at Sulphur Creek, people started to ask questions. There are concerns about the need for licenses, the impact on a protected waterway, and the presence of old fuel tanks at the site. There were questions that didn't have clear answers. You likely didn't notice the first warning signs, like an inspection that was late or a visit from government officials who were quiet, but they were there. Those red flags turned into subpoenas as Parker pushed harder, running operations 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and hauling thousands of yards of gravel through protected areas. Then the big surprise came. Parker was charged with intentional environmental violations at the federal level, not small ones, huge ones. Illegal dredging, messing up nationally protected streams, and not properly getting rid of trash are all connected to that $2,500,000 0 cents land deal. The lawyers looked deeper and found more problems. They found missing paperwork, overrides on permits, and worst of all, fake inspection reports signed by subcontractors who were supposedly working for Parker. The show stopped being about ounces all of a sudden and became about proof. To get his 10,000-ounce goal, prosecutors said Parker knew he had to go beyond what was allowed. They said he cut corners, ignored warnings, and put the environment and public safety at risk. The numbers were very bad in court. 68 violations were recorded, more than $3,100,000 0 cents worth of changes were made to the site without permission, the dirt around the equipment was contaminated, and over 8,000 gallons of hydraulic fluid were lost. His defense team tried to call an emergency brake. They said it was all a mistake and that workers had failed to do their jobs. They also said that the missing permits were just due to delays in paperwork and that they had no intention to break the law. Things got messy though when the emails were shown in court. Early in the season there was a thread where Parker was pushing for non-stop output and telling his team not to worry about agency interference. People didn't just raise an eyebrow at that message, it kept coming up over and over. There was less noise in the courtroom each time it happened. The case then moved. Someone who used to work on the crew but quit in the middle of the season came forward and said Parker knew exactly what he was doing, that he had been told more than once about the missing paperwork and possible violations, that he did anyway. At that moment, there was no longer a discussion about who was to blame. The court didn't hold back. It said Parker's acts caused the most damage to the environment, which led to sentencing guidelines that shocked everyone who watched. But here's the catch. There was an incident in the news, but the sentence itself didn't explain everything. No one said the word prison in public. There was no big mugshot or walk of shame on TV. Parker instead quietly and discreetly faded away from the spotlight. There were rumors. Some said he was talking about making amends. Others said he was in protective care, but no one knew for sure, and the quiet said more than anything else. It was Parker Schnabel, who was the Discovery Channel's golden boy. The kid started mining when he was a youth and had more than $13 million 0 cents worth of gold by the time he was 24. He was in charge of 8 spin-offs including Gold Rush and Parker's Trail, which made $24 million 0 cents in season 14 alone, but now there's nothing. Not even a word. The strange part? Parker was not the most flashy person. He was never a star in his own life. He didn't have any fancy cars or houses. He even said he slept on a friend's couch in LA when he was at the top of his game. His money wasn't wasted on flashy things. He instead spent the money on trips with his dad, shooting weekends with his friends, tickets to the World Series and trips to Vegas. It was never about the cash. It had to do with loyalty and knowledge. That was how he thought from the start. In Alaska's wilds, his great-grandpa made a life for himself. In 1937, his grandmother joined him. His dad still gets up at 4:30 every day to go to work. When Parker was young, he was around people who never gave up, worked through pain, and kept going no matter what. That is what made him who he is. That's what made it so painful to see him fall. He worked with his grandfather all summer and ate dinner with him every night, getting to hear stories that spanned generations. He says that image, the one he wishes he had written down, was more important to him than any gold bar. Parker has always known that money goes away. The legacy was what was important, that history is now in danger. He was meant to make a big comeback in season 15, when he weighed 10,000 ounces and beat all the other wrestlers. Instead, people are calling this season cursed. Breakdowns of equipment, fears about permits, and legal threats one after the other, everything was against him. Parker tried to keep his mind on work and work harder, faster, and better, but it wasn't enough. Something broke when the stress got too much. There is no way to know what will happen next. The $16 million he made this season are being looked at by lawyers. The claims have been put on hold. The crew spread out. A few are not saying anything. Some people are trying to keep things together. Things feel different without Parker at the heart, though. Parker bet the most on Dominion Creek than on any other thing. He didn't rent the land like he did before, he bought it. That meant there were no monthly fees or royalties to pay. It also meant that he was the only one who could lose. He signed that check for $15 million, 0 cents up front with no return. And that was just the beginning. The gold at Dominion wasn't just sitting on the ground. It was buried more than 40 feet down. It would cost millions more in tools, fuel, labor, and time to get there. It looked like a smart move based on the numbers. It is thought that Dominion has about 80,000 ounces of gold. At the price of about $2.00 an ounce on the market right now, that's $160 million, 0 cents, just sitting there. Parker saw more than a mine there. He saw a future. He'd get there if he could pull 10,000 ounces every year for 6 seasons. That was the point. Those were the plans. There was a catch, though. The water rights and permits were only good for 6 more years, and after that, there are no promises. Everything in the ground would be lost if the license wasn't renewed by the government. Parker did what he always does. He put everything on the line. His crew began moving millions of tons of dirt, 25 million bank yards over the claim's life. That's more than 4 million yards a year, and the stuff gets bigger when you move it, which would make it more like 30 million yards. That much work is not only tiring, it's crushing. Things break, workers get tired, and plans get pushed back. Everyone is under a lot of pressure. It was felt everywhere. Tyson Lee, Mitch Blaschke, and the rest of the crew were pushed every week because this wasn't a lease. There were no safety nets. Every wait cost money. Parker would lose $1 for every ounce they couldn't get back. It wasn't a choice for Parker to fail, not after that check, not with that time frame, not when the whole plan depended on him staying ahead of the curve. 10,000 ounces a year no matter what. Let's go back a bit. Parker didn't get where he is by being careful. There was no doubt about it when he first came to the public's attention in 2010 on Gold Rush, Alaska. Parker was more interested in the ground, tactics, and crew than the other miners who bought toys and trucks. He had made $13 million, 0 cents in gold by the time he was 24. He won $24 million, 0 cents by season 14, and the show followed him to the Klondike, Oregon, Colorado, and even Guyana. He worked hard, made plans, and most of all, fought. But something changed in season 15. Dominion changed things, but so did the stress. Parker said that the cost wasn't really what scared them. He was getting rid of his team, the people who had been with him from the beginning. He'd rather lose them than lose money. And that's the reason he picked to get big. Not shrink, not turn, and not leave. He got more land. He grew his business. In fact, he made a deal with Metallic Minerals to pay them a fee for giving him the right to mine a 12-kilometer stretch of Australia Creek alone. That agreement alone required a minimum yearly payment of $1 million, 0 cents, plus royalties for every ounce that was taken out. Not only did he have to run Dominion, but he also had a whole new site under the control of Little Flake Mining. That's how quick the scale grew. That's why the group dynamic was so important. It was Parker who said it. He didn't want people who couldn't handle stress around him. People were kicked out if they couldn't keep up. Not a single reason or second chance. The bar was higher than ever because there was a long-term prize of $200 million, 0 cents at stake. Things didn't stay easy though, because mistakes became less likely as the job got bigger. It added up, with every broken wash plant, every delay caused by bad weather, and every ounce of extra that wasn't met. That's where the stress began to seep into relationships. That season, Parker didn't see Rick Ness very often. They just barely ran into each other. Parker only saw Rick in real life twice all summer. They had a big talk in front of the camera about a tough situation Rick was going through. Besides that, though, they ran in different ways. The same goes for Tony Beats. Spider-Man and Tony had a fight years ago over everything. Royalties, permits, and land. They stayed away this time, though. A few cups of coffee with friends in between acts. Not anything else. Parker no longer had to pay Tony anything. He owned the land. Most people didn't expect that from a guy who has been the star of a popular Discovery Channel series for over 10 years. A watch that costs more than a car is not on his wrist. He doesn't keep rare cars. Most news sources say he only owns the small house in Haines, Alaska, and not any other homes. It is on private land by a quiet lake and is 2,000 square feet. It was built in 2015 and has a metal roof and a wood frame, so it's not exactly Hollywood. What shocks you more about it? Sometime it was said that he got a $950, 0 cents mansion. Parker flatly denied it. He said he was homeless and would rather sleep on friends' beds. For most people, that wouldn't make sense, but Parker makes sense of it. This is the same person who bet all of his college money on himself. Back when most teens were picking out dorm rooms, he was picking out rock shapes and getting permits. That $17 million 0 cents bet on Dominion Creek wasn't his first. It was the most dangerous, the biggest, and the most seen. It wasn't easy to find gold there. It was 40 feet deep and the ground was frozen. To make it work, he'd have to move 30 million bank yards of dirt over 6 years. It's more than 5 million yards a year, all year long. Not just on the machines, but also on the people who work with them. This wasn't a small mine, it was an evil monster that loved gold. Parker was the only one who was ready to tame it. He didn't slow down even when gold prices hit all-time highs. He used everything to his advantage, hired more people, and added more tools. He agreed to pay Metallic Minerals a fee to mine Australia Creek, paying advance fees and promising to work for $1 million 0 cents a year. Not only did he mine for gold, he built a gold kingdom, and the work didn't end in Yukon. He went all over the world, to places like Guyana, Papua New Guinea, Alaska, Australia, and Brazil. He went from the Klondike to the jungle, from glaciers to jungles. Parker was filming Parker's Trail somewhere in the world when other crews were packing up for the winter. He was digging for gold where few would try, taking care of details in languages he didn't know, fighting bugs, mudslides, and altitude sickness, and anything else that stood in his way of another payoff. He got sick once at 16,000 feet in the Andes. It was so high that he was sick, but he kept going. The camera kept rolling through it all. With Gold Rush, Parker's Trail, streaming rights, merchandise deals, and sponsorships, that $25,000 0 cent salary per show quickly added up. According to some sources, he makes more than $4 million 0 cents a year from mining, TV contracts, and licensing. His crew? Their own pay ranges from $10 0 cents to $25 0 cents per show. It's a machine that makes money. But there's a catch. Parker was never after the money, even though he made a lot of it and had a lot of shows where miners watched. Not really. He wanted to leave a memory by living up to the standards set by his grandfather, trying to keep his crew safe and show that someone from a small Alaskan town could face and beat the toughest job in the world. That's why this moment is stronger than anyone thought it would be, since this isn't a famous person in trouble. Parker Schnabel is the kid who grew up in mud, the person who never gave up, and the leader who used a backhoe and a group of dedicated workers to build a kingdom. His fans are shocked to see everything put on hold, even if it's only for a short time. Investors, miners, and everyone else, his $16 million 0 cents gain from this season frozen. His claims at Dominion are being looked at by the law. His royal places are quiet. His future is not clear. The big problem that no one wants to talk about is still being shown on Discovery in season 15 show. It's not being said, but everyone feels it. So the question is, does Parker get better the second time around, or does this part mark the end of a great run?